Here's Brody Brazil.
Obviously, this is a video that nobody wants to make, but I feel it's important to document the injury to Erik Karlsson and now the corresponding surgery to number 65. What does it mean for the player? What does it mean for his team, the San Jose Sharks, which in 2022 were desperately trying to make a postseason spot after missing each of the prior two campaigns? Now, I was a bit worried last game when Karlsson was out with the upper body injury, didn't know what the injury was or the severity. We found out he would not be traveling on this upcoming road trip of 4 games. That was also a huge concern because it did kind of let you know that with the All-Star break and more time off, that this was something serious. And then today we find out it was, in fact, surgery. So that brings us to the key details. It was yesterday in Santa Clara County, January 24th, surgery, which was successful, to repair a small muscle tear in Erik Karlsson's left forearm. Now, the hard part about this specifically, and with a lot of injuries, let's be honest, you don't know how bad the injury is until you get in there and look at it, how the surgery will respond, what the recovery time is like, but it's a very difficult timeline, the Sharks are saying, for an injury like this and the recovery. They're saying it's variable. There's no way they can set a timetable on it. The only thing the team does predict and know is that Erik Karlsson is going to be reevaluated in mid-March. Now, that's tough timing. We're here in late January. We just entered the second half of the season. This year does run a little bit longer. The season goes through basically the end of April, but that doesn't leave a lot of time at the end of a season which you don't know what the Sharks will or won't be playing for in April. Hopefully it's something. We just don't know what's going to happen between now and then. More on that in a little bit. How about Karlsson's season this year? And that's what makes all of this so frustrating. He was trending up. We'll talk more about that later, but 33 of the team's 42 games. He had already missed a handful, COVID being a large part of that. He scored 8 goals, all of them at even strength, none on the power play. He only actually took 83 shots in those 33 games, meaning that his shot percentage was among one of his career highs at 9.3%. He was getting results this year. People saw him shoot, well, not as much, but they saw him score more on his shots, and that was all part of the upswing. 18 helpers adds up to 26 points, a -4 rating, skating an average of 23 minutes, 6 seconds time on ice per game. This had been a really good season for Erik Karlsson. This was kind of a rebound, an upswing, whatever you want to call it. You know, people were definitely happy to see what 65 was doing on the ice. It also brings the conversation, which I know a lot of fans will get into, that Karlsson has gone through so many hurdles in the last several seasons, injury-wise, with the San Jose Sharks. His first year, 53 of 82 games played. In 2019 into 20, the team's season got cut short, obviously with the pandemic. They played 70 games. Karlsson was there for 56 of them. Last year, in the COVID year, 56-game season, he played 52, so he only missed 4. And this year, he's played 33 of the team's 42. Now, that would be a whole different proportion, like I said before, if he does not return for the rest of this season, hypothetically, and that's obviously a worst-case scenario. 33 of 42 looks fine right now, still frustrating, but 33 of 82 obviously has a totally different perspective to it. Okay, so let's get to Karlsson's history. And this is another frustrating thing for San Jose fans is he's a player who had been healthy for many of those years with the Ottawa Senators. 82 games played when he was 23, 4, and 5, even 77 games, 71 games. Now he's kind of been hovering in the 50s ever since then. So frustrating to say the least. Obviously, he's with the San Jose Sharks through the 2026-27 season. There are 5 more years remaining on Erik Karlsson's contract. So we'll do this in 2 ways, some immediate thoughts and some deeper thoughts. What does Karlsson's absence mean to this Sharks team as it relates to playoff contention? And I've been saying it for the last couple weeks, even despite a rocky month of January, a 2-5-2 record here in the month of January, but I still think this team is capable of getting to the playoffs. What does this do, minus one of your top players? What does it do for your playoff contention? I think it's fair to say it's going to have a significant impact. To what degree? we don't know yet. But to think that it doesn't mean anything, I understand. The team will say next man up mentality. This is what we've been doing all season. And that is true. That's the approach they have to take. But again, you're minus one of your key players, one of your highest compensated players, somebody who means something critical to your team. It's definitely going to have an effect. How severe, we're soon going to find out. The other two things that are next year are related. When you come back, or at least you're reevaluated in mid-March. Let's say it takes another week or two and everything's fine to get your legs back. Now we're talking about April 1st. So if you're ready to go by April 1st, do you play those final 3 or 4 weeks, or do you not risk it? Is it not worth it at all to make sure you are completely healthy for the start of next season, which I know is a hard thing to say in April, thinking about next October, but that is going to be a question, and that is a dilemma of any player in any pro sports season when the injury happens in the second half. Time is not on your side. You're racing your recovery compared to when the season schedule runs out. It's a tricky situation. So there's two options there. I don't know what we'll see. Wouldn't it be great if things were ahead of schedule? But again, these things are very difficult to predict. The Achilles, the groin, the thumb. Erik Karlsson is 31 years old, and it honestly does seem like he's dealt with so many different injuries. And, it hasn't always been apparent. I know the Achilles was one that was easy to see, but it hasn't always been apparent when and where he's been hurt. I'm not saying there's a good or a bad way to get hurt, but all these things keep cropping up and surprising Sharks fans. And it's unfortunate. I mean, let's be very clear about this. You think you're frustrated about this. How do you think Erik Karlsson feels? And last but not least, here on my immediate thoughts, that next man up mentality is obviously going to include a deeper look at defenseman Ryan Merkley. He's made his debut, obviously, before with this team, has had some strides and had some spans where people really like what they see in his game. So he's definitely going to get a significant look here, or somebody else will if it doesn't work out for Merkley. But it does seem like number 6 is going to get that first crack at it. So those are my immediate thoughts on this. Now to the deeper layer and levels. Erik Karlsson was trending up this season. Like I said before, it didn't just have to be apparent on the stat sheet. If you watch his game on a nightly basis, the legs were there, the confidence was there, the playmaking was there. Would have liked to have seen more on the power play, but again, that's a whole team thing, not just a one-player thing. That's what makes all of this so frustrating, I think, especially from the fan base, is you started to see Erik Karlsson that you would hope for this season, and now he's not going to be able to sustain that for a full schedule. Point number 2 here, what impact does Karlsson's absence make on the season for the Sharks? And then what impact does that have on potential trades that they do or don't make? Right? If you're out of contention, and I'm not hoping for this at all, but let's be honest here, what does it mean for the team and their personnel in the rest of the season if they're not right there in the hunt, in the mix for a playoff spot? That's what they're aspiring to. There's no question about it. And I also think it's important to realize, some players are of a longer term commitment you would hope, like a Tomas Hertl. They're looking at number 48 for years down the road. So I'm not sure that there's a direct impact right there. Karlsson missing the majority of the rest of this season versus what you might want to do with number 48. I don't know that there's a connection there. But there might be some related things that the Sharks do or don't do as it relates to trades because of where they're at in the standings, because they don't have number 65. I know I'm making one leap to get to another leap, but you can kind of put that all together. Fan frustration, let me just say it like this. I know a lot of people are going to look at Karlsson's contract and 5 more years and the amount of money he makes and the compensation per year as it relates to the team, highest paid, and across the league among the highest paid. Like those two things, I know how they're viewed, but they don't have anything to do with each other. I mean, compensation and unfortunate injuries that are part of the job, part of playing the game. Like you tell me how they're connected. They're not. They are independently frustrating, and when you combine them into one thought, it becomes frustrating. There's no doubt about that. You put a lot of weight on his shoulders. You were expecting a lot, and now to not get anything, clearly that's frustrating. That's the part I can relate with. It's frustrating to everybody. And relating to cap space, obviously you can put Karlsson on the long-term injured reserve and you can gain a little bit of cap space, but if you're the Sharks this season and you don't know for sure that you're contending, does it really make sense to then utilize that cap space in a season like here and now versus potentially putting it on reserve? And maybe that does secure you more money down the road for a Tomas Hertl contract. I don't mean more cap space down the road. I just mean more ability to take care of a different player. So LTIR cap space, yes, but I don't necessarily know what that means. Then it gets to contention for the Sharks this season, and we're going to talk here about the wild card specifically. Obviously, there's 3 spots in the Pacific Division, which are also kind of a rat race at this very moment. Every team has played a different amount of games, but look at this. 7 teams right now legitimately in the mix for a wild card spot in the Western Conference. Minnesota far and above at 53 points, and then you have Calgary, Dallas, San Jose, Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Vancouver all separated. 6 teams there separated by 4 points. That's busy, right? So this adds to the challenge of, the Sharks being a playoff contender. They need every ounce of help they can get, and now they don't have one of their main defensemen. So now and later, let's look at the Sharks as a team now and moving forward in this season. They get Washington, Florida, Carolina, and Tampa on this 4-game road trip that, again, we were wondering if Karlsson would be on. He's not. Now we know he's not around for a significant time. But after this, the Sharks go on their, let's call it all-star break of about 12 days. After that, 36 games remain in the regular season. That's a tough stretch right there. The Caps, the Panthers, the Canes, and the Bolts, right? Very heavy, difficult Eastern Conference opponents. Going back to where the Sharks are in the standings, they were in a playoff spot not long ago. They've slipped a little bit. Let's see where they stand at the end of this trip. As I mentioned before, 7 teams in the West for 2 wildcard spots. And this should also be established too. You're now losing Erik Karlsson, but the Sharks have been without his main D partner, Jake Middleton, since the beginning of this month of January. He took that hit in Detroit on the road trip a couple road trips ago, and we have not seen him since. So we know it's likely a head injury, and that's very unfortunate. So you're not just losing Erik Karlsson here. To make it very clear, you're losing probably the best D partner he's worked with this season in terms of what made them both productive. You just lost an entire D pair there for quite some time. So that's where the Sharks stand here in this difficult stretch. Again, all of this frustrating. Wish I had something better to talk about, but I think this is significant. I think it's, again, going to have some kind of impact on the rest of the Sharks season. To what extent, we will find out. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments section below. I hate to even say it this way. If you liked this video, I don't mean the content, the way it was presented. Give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel. I would also really appreciate that. All right, I will talk to you next time. We'll see you tomorrow on television.